Hey
Hey there.
there.
Hi. How's your snow day been?
Pretty good, actually. How about you?
Yeah, I've just been huddled up in the house. Hey, Dorothy.
Hi, Dorothy. Yeah, it's been well, I didn't do the shoveling that Robert did, so I I can't complain about
Yeah,
having a personal shoveler, that's for sure.
yeah, it was heavy snow too.
Yeah, and then it started to rain a
Wasn't
bit over here.
yeah, yeah. We had a couple of nice neighbors go through early this morning and use their snow blowers on a lot of the neighborhood and sidewalks and even got up in my driveway anyway, and some others, and so it just took me, a lot less work later that afternoon to go through and clean those ruts out again. But even then, it was heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Candace.
Hi.
Hey, Tom. Lila, do you mind giving us an update on George?
Ooh. Wow.
Good. He's doing well, thank you. His
Oh, that's
wound is healing, and it's going to take a long time, but he's doing well. Thank you for asking.
sure. You're welcome, and tell him happy birthday. I understand he had a 95th this week.
He did. He did
Well, very
indeed.
good. I'm glad to hear he's doing well.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Darrell.
Hi, Darrell.
Dorothy sent me a nice photo Sunday of her pooch fascinated by the turkey puppet on the computer.
Oh.
I couldn't get onto Zoom, you guys. My application disappeared.
Uh-oh.
I'm glad you are here. So is everyone
Glad you
here?
made it.
Dick's not
Dick,
here.
I think.
Okay, I guess you guys we'll call this to order, although it seems like it probably has been in order.
No, I think we're waiting for Betsy too, right, Dick?
Yeah.
Betsy,
Okay.
1, 2.
Yeah.
You're waiting for
And
two.
Lily.
Oh, Lillian.
So,
Yeah.
Can you see us,
Oh,
Catherine?
yeah.
Catherine, can you see us? Yes. Okay. The application dropped, the Zoom application was gone from my phone and my computer, and I still don't know why.
Hmm.
I'm getting a Zoom update, about, it seems like about once every 10 days, I get an update. It's unfortunately, I have automatic updates, or I don't know how to keep up with it.
Hmm.
I can call Dick. I have his phone.
If you want to start Airbnb-ing your home and you're wondering,
Let's see.
That looks like 6 of us now. Does anybody have Lilia's phone? I can send her an email.
I can send her an email.
It looks like everybody's here from my looking at things.
You see
No.
Lilia?
You're
Yes.
still missing
Oh.
Lily.
Okay.
No, Lilia's not here. That's
Oh,
Lila. That's Lila.
oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
And I have a Lily, there's Lily and Lilia and Lila. There's a lot of double
Right.
L's.
I'm sending her a text.
Yeah, and I'm sending her a email.
Okay.
Did we lose Betsy?
We did, Betsy.
There she comes.
Zoom really comes home when we have weather like this for a meeting, eh?
Yeah, really.
Jeez.
Oh, man.
Hey,
Hey, Betsy.
Hello.
oh, good, you can hear me. I got a new computer and of course, nothing's the same on the new computer, so. But it's okay.
Betsy, I had the weird experience of my Zoom apps dropped off both my phone and my computer. So I didn't get here till a couple minutes late.
Okay, yeah, I got you. I get it.
Well, shall
She
we
says
proceed?
she's hopping on. She says she's hopping on right now.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
good. Okay, good.
I'm sure she got your text and didn't see my email because text is how all the young people communicate these days.
Yeah.
I see a young person with new bangs there. Betsy,
What? What are you talking about?
aren't those new bangs?
Oh, well, I've been cutting it myself actually lately, Catherine. So maybe
Okay.
I messed up.
No, they're cute.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I don't have time to go get haircuts or something. I don't know. I'm not sure what the explanation is. Maybe I'm cheap. So,
I got my first haircut before I went to see my mom in about 2 years at Supercuts for $20, and it was really fast and good.
there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Here's Lilia.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right.
Well, I
Gang
think
here.
we'll call the meeting to order. And is there any need for the agenda to be amended? Looks like no. Okay, so, excuse me. Oops. So opening words. I thought of this poem because when there was all the trouble in the church and many of us were gathering to be on the board, it seemed like, okay, this is a mission, this is something important, and that feeling comes for me frequently, not all that frequently, but of an important cause. And this poem comes to mind. It's by Denise Levertov, and it's variation on a theme by Rilke. A certain day became a presence to me. There it was, confronting me, a sky, air, light, a being. and before it started to descend from the height of noon, it leaned over and struck my shoulder, as if with the flat of a sword, granting me honor and a task. The day's blow rang out, metallic, or was it I? A bell awakened. And what I heard was my whole self saying and singing what it knew. I can.
It's a nice poem.
It's a favorite of mine.
That's great.
So let us go on to, oh, sorry. So for the president's report, okay. Is that where we are, right? No, we're, is there any need to amend the minutes from October? Okay, looks like no. So can we approve then I guess that means we can approve the minutes for October.
Yes.
And the president's report is really something that we're going to be talking about much later in terms of the board budget priorities. We have a lot of time later this evening to discuss that, but the main theme that emerged for me is that even though there was a little bit of switch places between 1 and 2 of essentially making sure that we have good building maintenance funding and that sort of funding, and but the one that actually was the number one on most people's list was better cohesion and meeting opportunities for our membership, expanding our membership. So it all has to do with us feeling an ability to draw closer as members of the congregation. But we can talk about those, and also several people had individual suggestions that they wanted to make. But I think I'll just leave it at that because we've got plenty of time to discuss that later tonight. And the next thing on the agenda is the Todd's minister's report and update on NAUA.
Okay, yes, thank you. And I'd like to especially welcome Mike Long, who is joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina today, one of our church members. And Mike is 3 hours ahead of us. So it's getting late there for him. So Mike, thanks for being here.
You're muted.
You're muted, Mike. Oh, you're still muted. Huh. I don't think we have you locked out. No, you're muted. You're muted, Mike. Sorry about that. But you are moving your lips.
Okay, now you can hear my wonderful Southern accent.
Now we hear
for
you.
I am so excited about your congregation and its transparency. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so excited to be like intruding like this. The transparency is great, and I'm excited to be a member of your congregation. And I'm really excited with what we're trying to do with this new version of religion. So, in any event, thank you for letting me join you and observe.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike. And this will be a second opportunity I have had today to see Mike. We were in a Zoom meeting earlier, and that meeting also included Terry Anderson, who is in Alberta, Canada, and he's doing well. He, as you know, he had a pacemaker put in, or some of you know, he had a pacemaker put in. So it was good to see him in the meeting. He's doing really well. But like Mike, he also mentioned that he had, you know, in all his travels, he'd never known of a Unitarian church board. that posted, it opened its meetings up and posted them online. Thought that was just a remarkable show of transparency. So yeah, so I guess I will talk, update you on the NAUA. This is something that a group of us has been really rather quickly trying to get established for the past couple of months, including two members of our board of trustees, Candace Schmidt and Lynn Janician, and then Dick Gammon from our shared ministry team have also been a part of it, as well as Rebecca Adams dropping in from time to time to help us out with some of the details. And then we've got Terry and Mike and Jay Kiskell and Frank Casper and a few others from around the region who have been involved in this. At this point, as far as the formalization of the group goes, a subgroup that consisting of Lynn and Candace and Dick and myself, Dick Gammon and myself have successfully been able to get a letter from the IRS with an EIN number. We registered as a church, which should give us automatic exemption as a nonprofit. We have filed articles of incorporation with the state of Washington. We've not received anything back yet. That happened early last week. And Mike Long has been actually taking care of the trademarking for us. So thank you for that, Mike. The paperwork was filed last night, if I remember what you said correctly. Yeah. So we're moving right along. We talked this morning about a kind of a sense of urgency that a lot of us are feeling right now. As I think most of you know, the Unitarian Universalist Association has made a couple of very surprising moves within just the past less than a month, really, which began with a draft of changes to what they call Article 2. Article 2 is the article in the UUA bylaws that contains the 7 principles. Some of you may remember back early this summer in one of my reports, I mentioned that I didn't believe we would ever vote on the 8th principle. I believe that the way things were going, they were going to make a move to get rid of the 7 principles altogether. That's what they have done. Their proposal is to eliminate the 7 principles, replace them with 7 words. Those words do include independence, individuality, freedom, democracy, any of those values that are traditionally associated with liberals. So that's caused seemingly quite a bit of havoc and concern, even from people whose radar was not up yet. In addition, last year, in a series of moves over the past 3 or 4 years, it would appear the UUA has been trying to get control of who the president of the association will be, basically hand selecting that individual. And they've been changing the rules quite often over the past few years, sometimes rather stealthily. But last year they proposed that they changed the bylaw requiring the Presidential Search Committee to put forward 2 or more candidates, or maybe it's at least 2 candidates, to 1 or more. And the delegates refused to accept that change. They would at least rather have the pretense of democracy by having a team of 6 pick 2 people and put them to get forward and say, now you choose 1. But nevertheless, it was announced last week that they were just going to put 1 forward, even after the delegates refused that attempt last year. And they made up some, ridiculous excuse that they had another candidate, but they dropped out before they announced them. And so they're not going to try to get another one. as if there were only 2 people interested in the position. So that's also caused a lot of concern, and we're seeing a lot of chatter of people saying, geez, we need another organization. Geez, where are we going to go? I'm ready to just leave the Unitarian Universalism altogether. It's a farce. There's a lot of frustration that is mounting right now. And so it seems prudent for us to let our fellow UUs who are concerned that help is on the way. And so part of our meeting this morning, I wanted to get the okay from the group, was that during my sermon this Sunday, I will make a public announcement about the NAUA, letting folks know what it's about and that it is coming. I just wanted to, just 2 more things. One will regard the board's responsibility from here on out, I think, to begin conversations with our congregation about this. Even once the NAUA is up as a formal organization, this doesn't necessarily mean that our church is a member of it, or that it's even endorsed by our congregation at this point. And it only seems right that needs to happen, with some conversations between the board and myself and the congregation. However, it does also seem important and significant that our church should be a founding member of this organization. So I hope we can move, reasonably and swiftly and fairly to make that happen. Now, finally, I want to say just a little bit about what I see this group as being about. The first question we should answer and be able to answer for folks is, this is not an alternative to the Unitarian Universalist Association, although it may need to become so. What we recognize is that the Unitarian Universalist Association is no longer serving liberal members or liberal churches. And there are certain things that we need an association of congregations for. A big one is ministry. Where do we get liberal ministers if we can't get them from the UUA? And currently we can't get them from the UUA. Secondly, how do we stay connected to the larger movement and the ancient tradition that is ours, if we are a lone church out here in the wilderness with no connection to any of those things? And so that is the purpose of this. And it would basically say, we're just trying to erect something to fill that gap that no longer exists for us. If people want to stay a part of the UUA, go ahead. I hope that the UUA might even turn around, and I would advise that we do stay part of it until it becomes so lost that we just can't be, in good conscience part of it anymore. But my fear is that it is going to collapse in the near future, and we don't want to be left with nothing. So if we can put some systems in place to assure the continuation of our liberal religion, but also the support that is necessary for the continuation of this congregation, right? That's one of my biggest concerns, right? I've been here 12 years now. That's kind of a long time for a minister to be in a place. And I worry about what happens when I leave. So I want to see if we can't remedy that. And so I just want to open up my document. I won't share it with you, but here are some of the sort of services we see coming. Clergy, of course, being a big one that we'll try to get on right away. We also want to have a magazine and a regular newsletter, maybe even some video communications that would connect everybody who's a member of this association, and also hold annual meetings, conferences. Hopefully we'll restore regional groups so that there will be some activity going on more local levels amongst congregations. We also want to provide a better understanding of what liberal religion is. So history classes and whatnot that would help to educate our members about what we have been about and what we say we're about. as well as, joint activities, worship services, educational services, curriculum, that sort of thing. And we also want to really promote our democratic principles. I don't see why we should have an association that has, less than a percentage point representing its entire body during its elections. We have the technology now to just about have a so-called ballot in everyone's box, and we would want to make everybody who is a member eligible to vote in this organization. So those are some of the things that we see us moving toward with this group. But the most immediate things would be getting a website up, having at least a digital newsletter in place, and begin to work on the issue around ministers. Not because I'm, planning on leaving in the immediate future, but that is the number one question I get from churches that are struggling is,
Mhm.
do you know where we can get a minister? And I say, I don't. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's my report. If there's any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Todd, as I understand it, the intention is to make this open to both congregations, should they vote to join as a congregation, or to individuals who just may choose to join on their own. Is that correct?
Very good question. Yes, that's correct.
So Todd, what does the acronym stand for again?
It's the North American Unitarian Association.
Mhm.
And that would include congregations in the US and in Canada. We actually say in the preliminary bylaws that it is, or the articles of incorporation, I can't remember which, but we actually say it's open to Unitarians, Universalists, and other liberal religions, both individuals and organizations. So we don't really want to exclude anybody. It's almost certain the Unitarian Universalist Association has trademarked those two words,
Yeah.
Unitarian Universalism. So we're not going to go there, but we do want to include anyone who considers themselves part of a liberal religious tradition.
I'm just curious since, oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Well, it seems like you're following up with a thought. Go ahead and I'll have.
No,
something.
go ahead, Tom.
Well, just to point out, while you were talking, Todd, I did a quick review of our articles of incorporation and our bylaws, and I don't see anything in there that would prohibit us at any point. I don't think we need to take any action as a congregation if we wanted to join that. As you know, we dealt with the situation of whether we wanted at some point to bail out of UUA, but we don't have anything that I could see on a quick glance that would be that would limit us in going ahead with any association with this organization.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a good point, and it seems reasonable to, in most cases, organizations don't prohibit somebody from being part of another organization. Now, there are religious traditions where if you're a member of a church and you move to another church, you have to get a letter from your previous church and that you're transferring your membership. But in our church as autonomous congregations, we have it's spelled out specifically what it requires to be a member of our church, and it says nothing about how many organizations you're part of. People have asked me, well, what if I was part of another UU church? Or, I said, you could be part of 10 UU churches. That's none of our business.
Mhm.
Our business is, are you meeting the expectations of membership of our bylaws? So I think it would be the same with the UUA. There's nothing to say we can't join many different organizations. And in fact, we are part of a lot of alliances, including the Spokane Alliance. Is part of our work.
Mhm.
I have a question about being part of the Spokane Alliance. Did the congregation vote on us being part of it, or is that something that was a board decision?
I don't know. It would surprise me if the congregation voted, and that's a really good question. In my mind, the bylaws are pretty clear about the role of the congregation, and the role of the congregation, according to the bylaws, is really to alter the bylaws in some way, to approve the budget, to ordain and call and install and terminate a minister if necessary. And what's the other one I'm forgetting? There's another fourth one. But anyway, it doesn't say anything about the congregation needing to approve joining these various organizations. That's usually something that is left to a board of an organization, a board of trustees, to decide those relationships. Obviously, the board should decide in careful consultation and openness to the will of the congregation. I would think so. I don't think. I mean, I think it would be an odd precedent to call a special meeting for the congregation to vote on a matter like this when they don't. It's not something the bylaws really gives authority to the congregation to do, and then it sets a precedent for what other decisions would you be required to bring the congregation in on. But I do think at the very minimum we should start having conversations about it. I'm going to mention it in my sermon this week. I'll answer some of the rudimentary questions, like not having to abandon. It doesn't mean we're abandoning the UUA. We can be part of both. And those sort of things, but obviously we would like to get support from the congregation. Yeah, okay. I see Lynn, and then was it Betsy or Dick? Okay.
Well, I was just gonna remind people that actually we did vote about becoming members of the Spokane Alliance as a congregation, because the dues, the dues was quite a budget item. It was a huge expense at the time. And so, and we don't actually have yet what it's going to mean to become a member of this, or what it's going to cost basically to become a member of NAUA. But I do think if we did have that information, that would be certainly a board priority in our upcoming budget. And if we needed something to get us started, that would be something the board would be talking about even sooner if we needed to do something. I did do a bit of research today just about setting up a bank account, because as we talked about earlier this morning in that meeting, when Todd speaks from the pulpit this Sunday about NAUA, there are likely to be people who will want to donate the money to our cause, because there are lots of people already paying attention to what Todd is saying and what our congregation is doing. It doesn't cost any money for us to set up that bank account, and we have all of the paperwork that we need already. So all we need to do is call and get that set up, and we'll be ready to roll for accepting donations. But as far as I mean, one of the things that we have prided ourselves on since 2020, when we became elected, is certainly being as transparent as we can as a board. And I just think we want to have as many conversations as possible, whoever will listen to us. But I also think it is absolutely imperative that this congregation becomes the founding member of this organization, because people are looking to us from all over the country.
Yeah, I agree.
So I was just going to note that when we approve the budget, there are certain line items that are in there. And so it's at that time that the congregation actually has an opportunity to give its stamp of approval for the expenditure of this much money for that. And that's true for the Spokane Alliance. It's also true for the UUA, probably true for other organizations as well.
Good point. Oh, Tom.
Yeah, Todd, you and I talked earlier this week about this, and I feel that I want to throw this out just so that there's a little bit of conversation here and it may be something you want to address from the public. And that's the issue of whether this is going to require enough of your time that people are going to be raising the question about how is it that we justify time away, if you will, for lack of a bad term, away from our congregation and efforts at some other organization as morally, ethically correct as it might be. And so that was a conversation you and I had, and if you had any remarks you'd want to share with the board and might be a larger audience at some other point.
Sure, I appreciate you asking, because no doubt that question will come up. You know, the way I see it, I don't see this as extracurricular activity on my part. Our religion is in peril, and that means our church is in peril, is the way I see it. You know, again, if I were to leave tomorrow or next year, it's going to be a real struggle for the congregation to find a minister that is suitable to continuing our liberal tradition. And it may very well be in a couple of years, it's going to be very difficult for this congregation if things continue the course that they're on right now, without any kind of response from us. That this is just the Spokane, Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane just becomes an isolated entity out here on its own that doesn't have any connection to anything bigger than itself. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned with what the UUA is doing and the impact it has on this church. I understand just this past week that the President Gray spoke at the INUU church, and that is not something that I begrudge, but it is very unusual. I mean, it is a violation of our culture, of our ethics, for, especially given that we went through a split, for ministers to be from all over the country, from near and far, offering to speak at that church, for the president of the UUA to bolster that church, especially when they colluded with that church, and we have the documentation, colluded with organizers of that church secretly about figuring out how to fire me or bring me into conversations, if you will, about terminating my contract. So these, and then changing the rules, their own rules, so that they would be able to do these things. Having the largest chalice lighter grant in this district's history, given to that church just last year, recognizing the church with no conversations or care coming from the UUA to our church.
Right. In
the midst of all of these violations of their ethics, right? Those are their code of ethics. They're violating those at the expense. They're trying to undermine the health of our church, at least as I see it. And so our church is in trouble, folks. It is not just Todd Eckloff who has been ousted here. Our church has been ousted too. And at the same time, it is not just Todd Eckloff who is looked to with some admiration and perhaps some hope for some leadership in a new direction. It is our congregation. It is our congregation that Mike Long has joined, and others are joining, because they look to this congregation for the strength and the fortitude that it has demonstrated over these past 3 years regarding this issue. So from my perspective, this is not me doing something outside of what I would normally do as your minister. This is what I must now do as your minister. And my responsibilities shift all of the time as the years go on, based upon a variety of needs. And right now, this is a major priority for me, and is a major priority for me because I love Unitarianism. I love the liberal faith we're part of. I do want to see it survive, but mostly I love this congregation. Being a minister of this congregation is one of the most proud and humbling things I've ever been part of, right? Because of its history.
Good.
So, yeah. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Todd.
Hey, so Todd, I'm curious, the clergy aspect of the organization, I mean, in addition to addressing the peril that we're in, us and our liberal congregations, other liberal congregations, that seems like the most critical piece of this organization. Do you have any, seems like that would be the hardest thing to put together too. Do you have any idea about how long that's gonna
Well,
be before it's viable? Have y'all estimated that or thought about it yet?
yeah, you know, we have several priorities. The first priority is getting the paperwork done so that we're an official
Yeah.
organization.
Right.
Probably the next thing is going to be the communications, making sure we have a functional website and we have emails and at least a digital newsletter. Hopefully, within a few months, we'll even have a hard magazine to deliver to people, maybe a subscription. But my top priority is the clergy. And so just as soon as I'm cut loose from these other responsibilities, I want to put together a team of both, you know, members of this the founders of the organization, but also, you know, there's a lot of smart people out there. But you know, what I think we want to do is twofold. One is to create our own certification system, where we have certain requirements that we would be able to certify that certain ministers meet our standards for being defined as a, you know, someone who can carry out ministry. And my hope is that a lot of those quiet, silent ministers in the UUA who haven't really spoken up will find some courage to do so. In the immediate time, my sense is to call upon some retired ministers, you know, and just basically say, look, you know, we're calling you up for duty. And can you give us 6 months at a congregation that needs you until we can get this ball rolling and start to build our numbers. So we're going to have to be creative. We may look outside of Unitarian Universalism as well, but that's kind of what I have on my mind right now. And I don't know if you want to have a conversation now or not about, you know, starting some congregational conversations. I'd be happy to participate in those with you, but I think it's important for the board to be the face of those conversations.
How would we do that? How would we, I mean, you are going to mention what's happening in your next sermon, and then how would we arrange for conversations with the congregation about that? Does anybody have ideas?
Well, we've come off, you know, for a year and a half or so, you know, we worked on the bylaws, and then for a couple months we shared, you know, different sections, and people, you know, could join us on Zoom with comments. And to me, this seems like a lot easier because we're talking about, you know, one thing that has many facets instead of, you know, all these different articles that address different parts of the church functioning. So I would think we could, you know, offer a Zoom meeting for people, and we could also meet in person, you know, maybe between services or after services.
That sounds good.
I think, yeah, I agree completely, Candace. I think it may take, well, it might not take too much time at all after Sunday's sermon, but it might take, it could take a little bit of time for people to kind of sort through what their questions are. But if we just have a Q&A, a couple of us, even like we did with bylaws stuff, a Q&A table where people can come and say, what I don't really understand, or what's the history, or what's the background, or where are we going, or how does this impact us, or any of those kinds of questions that could come up. And Zoom meetings, and I do think it would be awesome, Todd, if you would come into a Q&A Zoom meeting, certainly with, if people want to, because people will definitely come to you at church. That's easy. They'll walk right up to you at church. But at Zoom, it'd be great if you were there.
For sure, for sure.
It looks like, Tom, you have something to say?
Yeah, I just regarding these kinds of things, in the great wisdom of the board, when they recommended the congregation adopted the bylaws, Section 7 of Article 4 says congregational meetings other than the annual meeting shall be governed, conducted according to above, and informal congregational gatherings need not comply with formal congregational meeting standards, other than a reasonable effort shall be made to notify the members. So you basically have incredible freedom to do whatever you want by way of communicating with the congregation.
Great.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Thank you, Tom. That's indeed, I think, a useful point of reference. And I could imagine having a congregational conversation, one of the informal meetings after the second service, announced ahead of time. I think it would be helpful to, prepare by having some sort of like maybe an FAQ, frequently asked questions, Q&A, sort of give people a sense of in what context might they want to frame their own the questions about their own concerns. Because I think that before there is a sense of what this might become and how it might serve us, before that sense is in place, there will simply be a lot of sort of inchoate impressions that don't congeal.
Right.
Perhaps after people come up and talk with you after your sermon, or maybe other people will encounter congregational members who have questions, you might like make a note of what they asked so that we could use that for our FAQ section, assuming that some other people might have the same questions as people that actually offer them to us or ask about them. And maybe in this sermon, you could even give a preview of coming highlights, that we expect that we'll be having some meetings coming up, and we will let you know about that in the newsletter and also in further sermons. Unless we want to set dates now for when we would do that. Yeah, maybe let's set dates at the next board meeting for when we do the special meeting by Zoom or between services. Does that sound doable?
That sounds good, Catherine. So Todd, do you think January would be soon enough for these conversations and this kind of decision for our, I'm hearing you about putting all the paperwork together, and there's a sermon this Sunday on the topic. What do you think?
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, we've got a lot going on in December already,
Right.
and it's going to be a short month because we've got Christmas and
Exactly.
and the first off, actually, because of the holidays fall on those Sundays every 7 years. And unlike other churches that meet on that day, we're like, nobody will be here. So yeah, I mean, it would make sense to really do it. Well, we could do something during the week as a first meeting, an evening meeting, kind of like we do with the board. And say if we were to do something on the Wednesday the 14th, might be early enough as to not interfere with the holidays, and then pick it up in January. It's kind of an initial Zoom meeting. I do feel some urgency to
Okay.
get the conversation going. So.
Okay. And plus there's probably some timing related to your sermon on Sunday any questions and so forth that may come up. So
Yeah.
I guess I have a bit of a concern with having meetings like this too early. I think we need to give people time to process this and to think about it. And I don't know, I know, Todd, you said there's some urgency. So getting the paperwork, getting the articles of incorporation, getting a trademark. Other than that, what is the urgency with having our congregation have this discussion?
Well, we are going to be having a lot of interest in this group, I suspect, immediately. Folks wanting to join and become part of it and looking to us to fulfill this organization, if you will. And I think that's gonna come at us pretty quickly. There's been a desire, which I agree with, that Lynn articulated, is our congregation being a founding member of this, if not really the founding organization, which I would be very proud if the church would do that myself. I think we should. But if we waited till January, that would be an entire month, really more than a month out from this. So what I'm proposing by the 14th would be 2 weeks out from basically just the mere mention of it. I don't know what people would think about outside of there being a lot of rumors that might start flying around. So even then, it would seem like it would behoove us to talk, sooner about it than January. I wouldn't say we have to, have anything the following week, but just my thoughts, just my response, Darrell. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think it would be fine to have a discussion or a Zoom meeting or a question and answer. I think asking members of the church to vote on joining something like this might cause some concern. I know when we were changing the bylaws, if I remember correctly, that there was some concern that we were kind of divesting ourselves or moving away from the UUA, and some people were not comfortable with that. So it seems like joining this group would certainly seem like a move away from the UUA, even if it wasn't. So those are just my concerns related to the congregation in general. Maybe some of those people that we don't see that often, that are more on the periphery. So anyway, my thoughts.
So,
You
Darrell, it
couldn't-
seems
you
that
couldn't have a congregational meeting that soon. So a congregational meeting to make a motion to join couldn't possibly happen probably until early January. But other kinds of assemblies you could have.
I thought we read the bylaws and we don't have to, it's not a congregational vote to join
That's
or
right.
not join. Unless we're paying, unless there's money involved and it's a budget line item like Spokane Alliance, it's not really a congregational vote. And Darrell, it seems to me that the points you're bringing up argue for talking about this in a FAQ, Q&A kind of way sooner rather than later, because it's just gonna, whatever, be a rumor thing. Especially, Todd, if you guys are moving ahead anyway, and the thing is getting set up. You've already set it up. You're incorporated, or got a bank account, right, Lynn? So we need to talk about it.
I agree, Betsy, that it definitely seems like the FAQ meeting at the least being held on the 14th would go a long way toward not allowing these kind of worrisome thoughts to fester within some people. And while Todd will make it clear that no, we're not leaving the UUA and there's a need for this organization too, even with him saying that, I think people may need to hear it again in an FAQ. And I think it makes sense to go ahead and say, yeah, we'll do a Zoom meeting on the 14th for an FAQ session for an hour, say. Does that sound like agreeable? I'm willing to be there. And I guess we need, one or two other people in Todd, one other person in Todd, to be there on the 14th for the FAQ session. I mean, it makes absolute sense because I too would like us to be founding members, and we'll get some sense of, how much in agreement people are just after the sermon. And with the FAQ session, we can schedule another one, next time. But I hope that we could maybe decide to go forward and be a founding member in January.
So I think that's fine. I think it's a good idea to have the Q&A and get ahead of any rumors or other things like that. If this organization, to be a member, I would assume, maybe incorrectly, I guess I should ask Todd, would you think that for a congregation to join, there would be dues or any kind of contribution?
This is not something, I cannot speak to this definitively, because this is something the group will have to decide. My belief is that we should ask our members to support us through contributions of their own abilities and choices versus having a specific amount. I think our organization should be required to prove its self-worth being supported on an ongoing basis, and not say, here's what we demand per member. We have that puts the onus on us to be active in our membership's lives and give them value for their support and their contribution. So I would like to leave it up to the congregations and the individuals, Carl, to contribute what they can. That would be my recommendation. To your other question, though, I think it's an important one, because there are some individuals that are concerned we're going to leave the UUA. I don't think that that's a major sentiment in our church, but I do think it is one that some share. And it would be misleading for me to say that someday the UU Church of Spokane may only be a member of the NAUA, as many other congregations around the country may be. That's not our goal. Our goal is to meet the needs that we have right now. But if the UUA continues down the path that it is heading, I suspect there's going to be a lot of congregations say, why are we part of this? We're getting our needs met from this other organization, and they really don't represent our values anymore. So it's at least, I want to be transparent about that, right? That may be the direction this goes someday. I'm not going to say it won't. I'm not going to say if you join this group that the church may not decide, may or may not decide to leave the UUA at some point, but that's not my intention with it.
Right. But somebody indicated that if the church was paying something like being a part of the Spokane Alliance, that costs money. If we contribute whatever amount to this new organization, that would require a vote of the congregation. That's the question.
It would be approved, as Dick mentioned, during the annual budget, if we were to budget for it.
Okay. So that could be a time when we could become a member of an organization, or is that another process do you envision? So would the congregation vote to become a member of an organization, and then there'd be a line item for a contribution for the next fiscal year, or how do people perceive that happening?
Tom, I think, has a response for that.
Well, we need to really be very deliberate and considerate about this. To leave the UUA, for one thing, just remind everybody, it does take, and it says in our bylaws, section 5, article 1, it takes a 2/3 vote to leave.
Mhm.
Okay. Despite any other conversation that's going on here, if we're going to, as a congregation, formally join another union, there is no other way that I could recommend as your parliamentary advisor that be a congregational vote, at least of a majority, to vote to join another organization. You don't have to fund it until the budget year comes around, because that's a whole other complication to try to fund something outside of your annual budget cycle. But if you jumped in and just had an informal meeting or the board just decided that they're going to, join an organization, I would throw up my hands in total frustration. So, we need to be very deliberate and very calculated about this and very careful.
Yeah. One other thing that I would suggest is that in addition to sort of questions and answers, that the board might arrange, and this could either be done, in church after meeting or on Zoom or both, but for one or more listening sessions. Basically, these are times when we're not telling other people, we're listening to what it is that they have to say. I think that could stand us in good stead. Take the temperature of the congregation as it goes along, and sort of like who and how many and what and with what degree of in commitment and so on.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that idea, the listening sessions.
Yeah, and with your Zoom capability, it could be, we could have all the Mike Longs that are out there.
Yeah.
Joining that conversation by Zoom. So it could be very well done.
Mhm.
Very informative.
Mhm.
Well, I want to just though, well, Mike Long is a member of our congregation, so.
Yes.
Yes, so, but I just want to be super clear that this meeting on the 14th would be just for our church, for our congregation, right? Because one of the things that the NAUA is definitely needing to do and talked about today even was a frequently asked questions place on our website that we are still in the process of creating, because there will be lots of questions from around the country. What the heck is this organization, right? And so if this church has a really good understanding of what this organization offers, that's different and remains a service organization. I think that's just super crucial that we are all up to speed on that, so that we can all talk about that, certainly within our own congregation, and then that can move forward to, the nation.
Mhm.
Or North America.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, we could have, I think it's going to be important that the meeting on the 14th be members only, Mike, including Mike and, people, our distant members, of course, so we'll have to make sure we have a Zoom. If it's not exclusively on Zoom, that at least we have it on Zoom, but I would think it'd probably be on a Wednesday night, a Zoom meeting anyway, so.
So Todd, another question related to congregations joining and our congregation being a founding member. Do you have any sense, and I guess let me back up. It's becoming apparent there's more interest among individuals for something like this. I guess my question to you is, in the next few months, say by the 1st of July, so the next 6 months, 7 months, how many congregations do you think might choose to join this organization by a congregational vote? Do you have any sense of that, or the other people that are on this part of this organizing committee?
I don't. I think initially we're going to have a lot of individuals join. I would, our congregation, perhaps the Salem congregation, or 2 congregations I could think of that should be able to do this without much fuss. So those may be two of our large congregations, but we really need to court congregations like the one in Kalispell, the one in Winthrop. Some of these smaller fellowships that don't have ministers, that have largely been abandoned by the UUA. I think courting some of those. I'm going to be speaking in Alabama, Christmas at a little congregation down in Florence, Alabama. I think those are the kind of congregations we want to invite to be part of this. So I think you get quite a few congregations in the first year, even though initially we're going to get an onslaught of individuals.
Right.
And-
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it seems like until we until we're further along in this, perhaps that every time there's a sermon about this or a discussion about this, that we ask for people to join as an individual with a donation as an individual at that point. And there might be a lot of people in our congregation already that think, yeah, this sounds good. I want to start with a donation at this point. Not the church as a whole, but individuals, so that every time the subject is brought up and people think this is a good idea and I'd like to put some money toward it, they know that it's invited and welcomed.
Right.
One
Well,
thought,
I'm remembering, oh, sorry, Dick, go ahead.
go ahead, Candace.
Well, Jay Kiskell was at the Zoom meeting this morning, and he's with he heads the Fifth Principle Project. And so he, talks to a lot of people around the country. And didn't he say that he thought he could kind of name like possibly 50 congregations? I might have heard that wrong, so correct me if I got that wrong. But anyway, maybe he's being overly optimistic.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think congregations will build, especially as the frustration mounts around the 7 principles. Now, keep in mind that proposal is only a proposal, right? They may wise up. I mean, they haven't wised up yet, but they may wise up and say, "Oh my gosh, we're getting way too much pushback. We can't possibly ask the delegates to vote on this in 2023." But who knows? They may alter it. They may change it. The delegates may not. It may not pass. There's a lot of things that could happen between now and then.
This is an aside, but we should make sure that we send as many delegates as we can to the GA next summer. We can all attend virtually. We can attend the business meeting virtually without cost, or at least it was that way that last year. So we should we should make sure we have our full delegates there.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm thinking that we are quite a ways beyond where our agenda said we should be at this point, and perhaps this is a good point to move on. Is that all right with everybody, that we just move to getting a Candace's ops team report? I know this is really important.
Yes.
We could spend the whole night talking about it, but I'm thinking we also want to get the rest of the business done.
Yep.
Okay, Candace, why don't you take it away with the op team report?
Okay, let me know if I'm cutting out. Hopefully I won't. Well, I have 8 items, and these are all the nuts and bolts. So we're kind of like going from the macro to the micro here. The team continues to address the current state of the church's roof, noting our roof is in great shape for its age, almost 30 years. There are no leaks or damage present. The team estimates the roof has at least 5 years of life left, but will continue to monitor its functioning on a regular basis. Ongoing issues with our current HVAC system have highlighted how expensive it is to continually repair it. The current unit is about 5 years past its life expectancy. A quote will be sought from Pro Mechanical, the company we are currently contracted with for routine maintenance and repair. The team considers replacement costs for a new unit to be a maintenance priority. The community auction wrapped up several years ago with $4,742 raised. About 85% of that figure has already been collected. Based on member feedback about inadequate restroom location directions, additional signage will be installed on the wall facing the sanctuary entrance in the foyer. Dan Eckert will be contacted about stencils/fonts that were used for other signage in the foyer. It was requested by some church members that a service animal policy be created, stating that only trained service animals as designated by state codes be allowed in the sanctuary. A policy will be drafted for the team to approve, and signage will be posted around the building. An official charge was written up for the building and grounds team and approved by the ops team. The building and grounds team is charged with implementing projects identified by the operations team as necessary and within the purview and capability of the team, according to seasonal task lists and at the direction of the operations team and/or the operations manager. Julie Jose has agreed to continue to serve as the team chair, and Julianne Morse has agreed to be the liaison between the two teams. For the past several years, the church has paid $2,000 a year to Bambi, an online human resources consulting firm, to help with personnel issues and ensure compliance with state codes. The team decided to cancel this service as its usefulness has declined since the first year we used it. And lastly, after our website was recently not operational for 2 weeks due to an issue that Network Solutions was unable to resolve, Rebecca is looking for a new hosting service, possibly Bluehost or GoDaddy, with consideration for finding the best solution for the needs of the church.
Good, thanks, Candace. Does anybody have questions for Candace? Yes, Tom. Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
Oh, the dropping of the Bambi service, I guess maybe you can elaborate on that, because one of the things that happened through the bylaw revision process was kind of the lack of a need for a whole bunch of language that used to already exist, partially because, if not significantly, because we had this Bambi service that provided all these different services, and therefore the finance or the personnel portions of the revised bylaws were significantly reduced and minimalized because of having this service. Was there any discussion of that?
Well,
Yeah,
go ahead, Todd.
no, go ahead, Candace.
Oh, well, the first year, we got a lot out of it because we learned what type of things we needed to have, like systems and forms and different things we needed to keep abreast of. And so I think there was a lot learned that first year when we had the service. But since then, we haven't really, received very much service from them because, we're already kind of utilizing what we learned during the first year. And so the team didn't think that paying $2,000 a year for basically not very much didn't make sense.
So what could they conceivably do for us? Like, now that we have these checklists and I assume, notices or postings or things like that, now that those things are taken care of, what could they conceivably do in any given year for us? Or is all the work that we really needed to have done completed?
Well, Rebecca did say that she is perfectly capable of going online to the state agencies and figuring out if things have changed or there's new requirements, or and she feels like she can do that herself rather than go through this consulting service.
Mm-hmm. And she has been doing it herself. Oftentimes she didn't get timely responses or really any adequate responses from Bambi. It seemed they were very, very effective in helping us get our files in order and get things set up, but we really haven't had any real need for them anymore. And some of their responses have been slow on the occasions that Rebecca has had questions, and she's just gone straight to the same agencies they do. She's learned what those are now and is able to kind of keep up with that stuff herself. So Now, if Rebecca should ever leave us, which, you know, I'm sure someday she will, we might be in trouble. So, but
Not
I
if-
think that's,
The
Yeah,
bylaws,
not if she makes a list of what the procedure is for the next person that fills her role, then we'd be fine. It sounds like, how many years have we been paying $2,000 that we haven't really used it?
Well,
oh,
you know, was it 3 years ago maybe that we decided? I can't remember. Donna, is it about 3 years ago? 3, yeah,
Three.
okay.
So 2 years of $2,000, that's $4,000 we could have put in our building fund instead. Yeah. But- So do we need to vote on that? Does the board need to vote on that?
No,
Okay, good.
I had another question. Oh, go ahead, Tom, if you have a question about this.
the only thing that we, as I mentioned the bylaws, what you did, and what it does say is the team shall work with any third-party vendor the board and or the operations team may engage. So we're okay if there's such a team engaged, then the personnel team will work with that body, and if there is none engaged by the board or the operations team, then it's a moot point. So you're okay.
I had another question for Candace related to the HVAC system. And it sounds like are you getting a bid for the continued maintenance and repair? A quote?
we think we should replace it. We think if we were really gonna, you know, work on a capital expense, the heat and air really is the problem. We've spent a lot of money over the years doctoring those devices. We have several in the RE wing, kind of up in the ceiling, that are really for home use, that have been put in a row and are what are being used back there, and they've been there since the building was built. The one that we have outside, sitting on the ground, kind of, you know, in the back near the choir lot, that sort of bricked in area, if you've ever noticed it, was actually designed for a rooftop. And we were beginning to think that, you know, being on the ground has caused it to weather differently than it might have if it were up high. You know, caused it perhaps a different type of stresses from pumping air up instead of down. But in any case, there's been a lot of problems with that. Some of them have cost us a lot of money. I remember one time one of the spindles broke inside it and just twisted everything up. So we had to do a major expense to repair that. So there
my
probably
question is, are you getting a quote for a new system or for
well,
maintenance on
not
the
yet.
current system?
I think she wants to compare
Oops, you're cutting out.
and
Candace.
contrast. But oh, sorry. Okay.
So say that again, Candace.
Well, I think she wants to get a quote from Pro Mechanical, how much it would cost to continue with them and with routine maintenance and repair, and then compare that with how much it would cost to buy a new unit with hopefully, you know, no maintenance costs for a while.
Right. So if you're looking at, and this is, I'm not trying to micromanage, but if you're looking at a new system, you probably should get bids from at least 2 different people.
well, we have to. That's one of our policies. I don't think it's a
Right, that's
bylaw,
right.
but it's one
Okay.
of our policies.
Okay.
But beyond that, you know, keep in mind what we've really done at this point was set as the operations team, that this is really the priority. You know, it's the roof is sort of the metaphor of what happens if there's a big
Right.
mechanical or big building disaster. But the one that is most likely to happen is with the HVAC.
Right.
The HVAC
Okay.
has aged out, and repairing it is just you know, sort of pushing the problem off away. So what Candace is saying is we're just going to explore cost and start to look at what it might cost and then how we might pay for something like that. So we're not at the point right now where we're looking for something we would financially commit to, just kind of exploring what the financial ramifications are, making that a priority.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay,
And-
and just in the line with the bylaws that you just mentioned, Todd, there is a bylaw requirement that that if anything exceeds 20% of the current fiscal year operating budget, it takes a 2/3 vote of the congregation. So
Great,
that's something
thank you.
Do we have a ballpark figure for the HVAC?
Okay.
If we got, if it was new?
No,
I don't have
no,
that.
yeah.
So we don't, it's not like, is it, we don't, I mean, 10,000 or 50,000 closer to one or the other, we don't know?
No, that's what we'll be looking into. Yeah.
Okay,
And a question I have is, are we talking about the HVAC for the main sanctuary, the HVAC for the RE wing, or both?
Both, I think if you know, we would obviously itemize those and see what we prioritize, but yeah,
Both,
both.
okay, okay.
I think we should move on to policies and procedures update with Lynn and Tom.
Okay, guys, I have 4 things that I want to bring to your attention, and I wish I could see both you and my screen at the same time, but I'm gonna make you little. And one of them, actually, I know that we are running shorter on time tonight, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. But one of them is a policy proposal that we'd like to bring forward for the board to approve, discuss, and possibly approve tonight. So the 4 things, the first thing is that the missing policy that on reinstatement of membership that we brought to your attention last month has been added, officially added by Rebecca to our current policy governance document. So you can find that there if we needed to look at that. The other thing that we have completed now, Tom and I are continuing to meet at 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoons. We have completed the cross references from the bylaws, anywhere in the bylaws throughout the whole document. We have found everywhere it says policies and procedures and gone then to the policies and procedures document to see what's there. And in some cases, we find that there's nothing there related to a particular bylaw. And in some cases, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And so we have not gone yet through the whole policy and procedures manual. That will be one of our upcoming steps to do. We are just at the point of saying, okay, here's where something can go. We can take this out of the bylaws eventually at our congregational meeting, or we're going to clean this up when we get to the policies and procedures manual. So that's number 2. The third thing is, this one is kind of important. There's a statement that occurs in multiple places in our bylaws, and that statement says, further details regarding this team may be found in the policies and procedures and in internal policies of the team. So it's that term, internal policies of the team, that kind of raised our eyebrows a bit. And we did a little sleuthing around. And so we're connecting with chairs of multiple teams, particularly those teams that are mentioned in our bylaws, at least to start out with right now, to determine their understanding of that term, internal policies. Do they have them? Where do they keep them? What do they say? And all of those kinds of questions. And what we have learned is that there's not really a standard on internal policies of a particular team. And so obviously this can become a problem, particularly with those teams that have specified rotating terms of service and who is holding what position on that team, who's rotating off, kind of like how Darrell did for us when we updated the bylaws and our positions 1 through 7, which position gets elected in what upcoming year. So we are recommending, and we don't have an idea of how this will look yet. We just started talking about recommending that teams have their internal policies written somewhere and sending those to Rebecca to have them all of those files stored in a central location. We both believe that this would be important for all teams, but particularly those teams that have those rotating positions. And some of those team chairs, we have learned, may be needing some assistance with setting up their rotating positions in the same manner that Darrell did for us, because some of them just don't know how to do that. So that is a phrase that we are just kind of familiarizing ourselves with and learning a little bit more about internal policies. The last thing I want to talk about is a policy proposal. But before I do that, I'm going to bring you back up and ask you if you'll have any questions about those three things.
Sounds like good cleanup work is going on. Tom, you're muted.
Just as an example of why this communication with these teams is important, you'll remember that in the case of the nominating team, when we had the controversial election 2 or 3 years ago, everything had just completely fallen apart. Nobody had an idea of how long people had served. There were people who should have been appointed by a process that didn't even exist, and everything like that. So as an example of how important it is for these 2 or 3 teams that have this rotating position in staggered terms to have a process in place. It is very important, and I just want to emphasize that.
So then I had a question or a comment. I wonder, would it make sense for each team to have some minimum set of internal policies?
Well, it depends. It really depends on the team.
Right.
So, for example, Nancy Avery is the person I spoke to from the nominating team, and I asked her about their internal policies and where they were and what they were, and she said they're all in her head, which is not uncommon, I'm finding, in many of our teams, or on some of our teams that are not necessarily listed in our bylaws, like the Memorial Garden team, which I'm a member of. There's a book that somebody has somewhere. So, but not all team members even know what is in there. So it would behoove all of us, I think, the entire ministry of the church, which is our teams, how we kind of do our thing in our church, to have a central location where all those files are kept. And so if somebody comes into our church and says, I want to be on the Memorial Garden team, then Rebecca can say, well, here's what that team looks like, or somebody can everything is just centralized. So there's a lot of work ahead to be done, and nothing is urgent because we've been functioning for quite some time like this. But I think it's really interesting and good to be looking at this language and seeing things in the bylaws and saying, what does that mean? What are the internal policies of this group, and where are they kept?
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yeah.
Just as an observation, Darrell did a really fine service in setting up the rotation for the board. Maybe there should just be a model for that.
I agree. I agree. And I don't think it's that hard to, particularly, not every team has 7 members like that, although maybe others do. But at any rate, like the nominating team has 3, and they have a staggered terms, and they just, thought maybe they could get some assistance, and they could reach out to, and probably any one of us, or we could share.
I'd be happy to help anybody, and I could send that spreadsheet around, or help them.
Okay.
I could help them modify it to their needs.
That'd be great, Darrell.
Okay, just let them know.
I will absolutely send them your way. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, then lastly is this potential policy that we'd like you to consider. And this is something we have discussed in the past. So it came up last month when we talked about our policies and procedures updating going on. And it occurred related to the one statement in Article 3, Section 8 of our bylaws, which says that the board has the authority to refuse any donation. And so there are so many examples of what ifs, potential donations that could come to this church and be accepted or refused. So I don't want to go into all of those there, but I want you to know that we have considered every single what if that we have heard about in the past life of this church so far. So just quick examples, things like artwork, things like a flagpole, things like what if somebody says they want to put crosses all around the parking lot? What if somebody donates a used vehicle for a homeless person to live in? Or what if, what if? So what we have done is talk to Rebecca, who says that it would be very useful for her to have a policy for a non-monetary donation when something comes to her, for her to be the centralized location where the donation, so she knows about it going on, and that she would then refer things to a team, potentially buildings and grounds, let's say, if that's the one it needs to go to, and know that things are in the workings. So what Tom and I have done, and I'm going to just share my screen here and bring this up for you so you can see the recommended or the policy proposal that we are suggesting here. And it is all related to that particular bylaw that says the board has the authority to refuse, where the discussion came up, under what circumstances would we refuse something? So, sorry, I know I sound like I'm yammering because I kind of am. Okay. So here is the current section, Article 3, Section 8 of the bylaws. The board has the authority to refuse any donation. And this came about really because of a piece of artwork that was donated to the church, went to the aesthetics team, and the memorial garden was going to accept this. And then a whole bunch of stuff occurred, and then it didn't end up happening. But at any rate, we thought it would be unusual and strange, actually, for a board to say, well, we don't want that piece of art, when it's really none of our business if some other team wants it and has a use for it and a place for it and thinks it's great. So this is the policy that we are proposing that something would happen. And I'll just read it for you. Pursuant to Article 3, Section 8 of the bylaws, the following guidelines shall be used for consideration of whether to accept or reject a donation. In no particular order, the donation should neither be contrary nor conflict with the following. The church would benefit from the donation either aesthetically or utilitarian. The church can, based upon current or likely future budgets or likely volunteer efforts, manage, maintain the donation. The donation is consistent with local, state, and federal laws and regulations. The donation is consistent with UUCSN's statements, mission, purpose, and principles, and consistent with ethical norms of a liberal religion. So this sort of covers all the, well, what if somebody wants to donate a flagpole? Well, we need to have a lot of volunteer efforts. Flagpoles are very difficult to maintain, and flags have to be raised and lowered at certain times and blah, blah, blah. A piece of artwork may very well be considered aesthetically perfect for a particular team. So the board would not just get to say, I don't like that piece of artwork. A van where somebody could live in or something would not be consistent with local, state, or federal laws or regulations. Crosses around the parking lot would not be consistent with UUCSN statements, mission, purpose, or liberal religious belief systems. So we tried to cover all the what ifs possible, and surely there will be something else that comes up. But those were the things we came up with.
And ultimately, also, it may be that this is a policy for right now, but it might be something that would be added in an amendment to the bylaws. So it's not kind of tucked away in a board policy, but is available for anybody looking at our bylaws. That would yet have to be determined.
So this is not replacing the bylaws, it's just,
No,
Okay.
this is, this would then, we would be able to say that there's something in our policies that gives a little bit of clarity to the board. Under
okay.
what circumstances would we refuse a donation? Why would we do that?
Okay. So when I think, when I look at this bylaw, I think of refusing a monetary donation from a white nationalist, for instance. That's when I'm thinking about donations that we would refuse. That's an entirely different kind of deal. I mean, we could certainly do that without conflicting with what you've written.
Yeah, it seems like when I first came, somebody wanted to make a monetary donation for something very specific that we didn't really need, you know? And so it might not necessarily be something as extreme as somebody that we would disagree with, but just something we wouldn't want. And it's a huge amount of money, but say $100,000 gift, but it's for a flagpole, for example, something that we wouldn't really want. So
Well, in the example that that you just mentioned, Daryl, if it's a monetary gift, that's addressed on another section of the bylaws, and that raises an interesting issue because if something is monetary, we have a way whether it goes to the operating fund or whether it goes to the endowment fund. So that example you gave wouldn't really be addressed here, I don't think, because would fall under the monetary. I don't know whether it's section 7. I can't pull my bylaws up with the screen sharing here.
It is section 7, but in this particular policy, we are talking about non-monetary donations. And I'm
You
not
might want to
sure.
include that. Right? I mean, it says accept or reject a donation, you could put in non-monetary donation in the end of the first sentence.
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I would.
Go ahead, Todd.
I would suggest that this should cover monetary donations, right? If you accept monetary donation, then it falls under the Article 7, and you determine where is it going to go, right? But if it is a monetary donation from a white nationalist, I would think we would want to reject it under this donation that is not consistent with our UUCSN statements, right? Or our mission or our purpose.
Yeah. What's going through my head spinning though is how would we know about that? Where would that come into our, because we don't typically hear about the donations that come through the church. They just.
True. We might not catch that one, but what if we caught like the one regarding the flagpole, right? We caught that one, right? That was a monetary donation. It wasn't a flagpole, but it was a designated monetary donation, right?
I see.
I don't recall. I just remember someone citing the example. I wasn't involved.
So it was
Yeah.
money, but really it was a gift for a flagpole.
It was a financial gift that we would have been designated, and that's not uncommon, right? For somebody to say, I'll give you this money, but I want it to be spent on this.
Yeah,
That's likely to come up.
Mhm, right.
so we
So
probably
we
don't want to say non-monetary.
You don't want to say non-monetary. You
Okay.
just want to say donation, because whatever form it comes in, it's still these things you guys have outlined are the cover for refusing it, whatever sort of donation. Money for a flagpole, you know, you got it covered pretty well, it seems like.
Well, maybe in parentheses, after the word donation, it could be put monetary or non-monetary. So it's clear that this would cover both types of donations.
That's probably a good thought, and what we could do is link it back specifically to section 7. We could come up with a tweaked wording for your next board meeting if these suggestions are something that you want us to follow through on.
And I'm thinking, rather than restrict ourselves to this being a bylaw, this could just go into the policy governance document, that the bylaw really only has to say the board has the authority to refuse any donation without necessarily having any more detail there, but maybe saying refer to the policies and procedures for this.
Well, that
So
one
that-
would change. We have written a potential recommendation for what we would put in the bylaws eventually. We can't change the bylaws right now anyway. But that would include, to see policies and procedures.
Mm.
The change we've talked about for the bylaws really has a lot more to do with who manages this. And we've got it to be, we're going to recommend eventually that the operations manager is the central, again, place. So the operations manager just always knows what's going on, that a donation has come in and where it should be, somebody should be working on it or thinking about it, whether or not it comes to the board. But
maybe one further statement in this would be, if the operation manager sees that this is a problem that falls outside of the other things that you've listed, that then it would be referred to the board for a decision. I'm just, wanting to leave it as open as possible for things we can't imagine yet. Time travel or who knows what.
Yeah, well, we are stuck with what the bylaw says, and what we were trying to do was an interim fill-in policy that would function under the umbrella of the bylaw, and realizing that we could come up with an amendment later to adjust the bylaw however we want to. But right now, we're kind of stuck with the language. The board has the authority to refuse any donation, and we need a fill-in policy to have in our back pocket until we can straighten things out. Of the bylaw amendment.
So do we need to do anything about this yet, since we're not, the bylaws aren't going to be coming up for a vote? Do we need to formally approve or not approve this?
not the bylaw, this would be a policy for the policy governance document. So we could approve this. We are asking you to approve this now, so that Rebecca can put this into the policies and procedures document, or the policy governance document, same thing. But if you would like this to be changed somehow, then I'll just take notes on that and we'll bring it back again.
So I have a grammatical change.
Uh-oh.
So, as the resident linguist.
Other than a period at the end of the word religion.
That's right. I'm compelled to take note of the fact that aesthetically is an adverb and utilitarian is an adjective. So, what we want parallelism. Why don't you rephrase the first one to say something like the church would derive benefit from the donation, either aesthetic or utilitarian.
Oh,
Sounds nice.
okay.
Do we have to say what the benefit is?
And do
Just
we want to,
donate.
do we want to include, financial?
Exactly.
Utilitarian.
That's long slope of every sort of benefit. Why don't you
Yeah.
just say benefit? I don't know. If you're trying to give instruction to somebody, then
Well, I think
just
what
like
here's what we,
more.
we really
Yeah.
started with a bunch of questions. And then Tom put this into beautiful language. I just wrote questions. And one of those questions was, well, do we want it? Does somebody want it?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And I, these would be reasons why we might want something, right? It's aesthetically pleasing or it's useful for us somehow.
Mm-hmm.
We had to use that crazy format that the current policy governance document was written kind of in the negative. That's why it's worded the way it is.
Yeah, like what if it was ugly and other people thought it was cool?
So you would also change aesthetically to aesthetic?
Yes.
Aesthetic, yes, right.
And would you put the parenthetical statement in there of monetary or non-monetary?
Well, I mean, we certainly can. I just don't see the need for that. It's because it's either one or the other.
I
It's a
agree.
donation.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't get to say by myself. So what do you guys think? You want that in there?
I think it would be helpful to have it in there, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Only because there was some confusion about it initially.
Yeah. Yeah.
To clear it up.
So Lynn and Tom, I have a question. You're saying that the operations manager will be the clearinghouse for this, but it doesn't say anything about that in this policy and procedure, should it?
Well, eventually we would like that to be something in the bylaws, but Tom?
I think it will work. I think it will work out. Who knows, probably a 1 in 1,000 chance of anything coming in the next 6 months before our next congregational meeting, when we would actually have a bylaw that would include language. The operations manager would be the first clearinghouse or the first contact.
Okay, thank you.
That is a great question, Darrell. We definitely talked about that
Okay,
a lot.
okay.
And a period at the end here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so with those changes, what can we do it, or do we want us to bring it back to you next month?
I say we do it.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have,
I
have-
think it's
have
fine.
we addressed Dick Steele's thing about aesthetically or utilitarian?
Yeah, we did that.
Is that?
Yep.
The church
that-
would derive benefit from the donation either aesthetically,
Either
aesthetic.
aesthetic or utilitarian.
So I need to cross this out.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
there you
thought,
go.
yeah, that's what I thought. It wasn't
Sorry.
consistent with what Dick said.
I'm for it.
Yep,
Me too.
You need to vote, folks.
okay.
Okay, I can't see on my screen with this
Oh.
up who's voting, so. Let me see. I'm looking for my hand and I can't find it. I'm voting for it, but I can't figure. Something's
like-
wrong here. I can't see my hand. So my hand is up.
Okay,
Looks
so this
like
is all in favor and we count 7.
Yes, it passes.
Yay!
So the
And
board-
Rebecca will probably have it done in a heartbeat, guys. So thank you so much.
And that content needs to be in the minutes, Dorothy, along with a vote. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
So
Thank
the
you.
board, so
Again, Tom.
question, so the board needs to vote on any changes to policies and procedures? Is that true?
I
Okay.
didn't think
We just
did.
made a policy.
Well,
Yes,
I know, I wasn't aware we needed to vote on it, so, okay.
He's asking about the policies around policies, aren't you, Darrell?
That's right.
Woohoo. A little bit circular,
About
but you know.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next point of business? Lilia, you were going to maybe give us a quick update on, have you found out anything about marketing OWL in social media?
Yes. Okay. I'll keep it super brief because I know we're super late. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So in short, I created a simple flyer about OWL with information about our upcoming classes because myself and I don't know if y'all know Marianne, she's in the choir. We are the only two facilitators trained and willing and dedicated and involved in this whole process. And both of us are only certified in 7 through 9 or 10 through 12 education in OWL. So those are the only classes we're really advertising at the moment. We really hope we get some more facilitators because 2 facilitators for a class is really difficult. I remember when I took it, we had 4 facilitators for like 10 students. Just makes it easier if somebody's gone, you have more people. We're also hoping for a little more diversity as we're both women. We'd love to have a male facilitator or something non just us two. I'm looking at my notes, sorry. And so that's kind of our hope. We're hoping to spread the word through. We've been looking at past facilitators, seeing if anybody who facilitated an OWL class in the past is interested in returning. My parents both facilitated it and I'm still trying to convince them to come back, but I know they're super busy, but I'm working on it. So that's in the process. We're also talking to people within the congregation or not in the congregation who we think may be interested or maybe a good fit for OWL. In regards to marketing or spreading the word, we're kind of at a dilemma because until we have enough students or interest from families of people who would participate in the classes, it's difficult to set a timeline or a date for when classes start. We need to ensure that we have enough participants to hold a class before we can set the date for a class. So it is like a very complicated process at the moment. We only have 1 student within the UU congregation that is expressed interest. And he's a 9th grader. And so it would, this is his end of the 7th through 9th, which is what we were originally planning. So now we're looking, maybe we'll have to do a 10 through 12. It's very up in the air in that sense. I did mention that flyer that I created. I'm gonna email that to you all at the end of this. It's in the draft mode still. We're still making finalizations to it, but just so you guys can all see it, it's 1 page. Our hope is that we can maybe set up a table in the back of the church after services and pass that out to people. I don't know if you guys know Kazuri, the store downtown, and their fair trade festival. I went to that this past weekend and I talked to somebody from the Fig Tree, that newspaper. And she's a member of the United Church of Christ. And she said that they do advertisements. And I thought that might be a good place to put an advertisement for both. We're looking for facilitators who are willing to train and teach this class because it's a big time commitment. And for youth who are interested or families who are interested. Other than that, we're kind of looking at talking with Odyssey Youth, the local LGBTQ plus organization in Spokane, seeing if they have any either youth who are interested or ideas on how to get the word out. I know Paul Dillon from Planned Parenthood. I don't know if that name's familiar, but he is one of the top up in there. I used to teach at Planned Parenthood sex ed also. So we're going to kind of reach out to some local organizations on how can we best get the word out about OWL for marketing tips, that kind of thing. But like I said, our dilemma right now is before we can get too much word out, we need to also have enough people who are interested either within the congregation or in surrounding churches like the UUC, or United Church of Christ. I always mix the acronyms up. And I always forget this one too, the Split Church, because we're all working on this together. It's just, we all have lots of young kids and not a lot of teenagers, but our facilitators are only trained in teaching the older classes. So
I have I have a question about that.
Sure.
How much time does it take for someone to become trained and certified as a facilitator?
I can only speak for myself. I trained this past summer, and because of COVID, it was all virtual. We met twice a week for a couple hours, and it took, I can't remember now exactly, it was like 5 weeks though. 2 meetings a week, 5 weeks. I know for my father, when he trained, he traveled to another city and he trained with Phyllis. I'm sure you all know that name. Phyllis, I forget her last name. I'm horrible with names, sorry. They trained and they did it all in a weekend, but you're training every single hour practically of an entire weekend. So it's a massive time commitment. It's a bit more accessible now with the virtual opportunities to train, but you have to be like passionate about it to dedicate the time to it. So,
And is OWL only a UUA program, or so it's outside of that?
so it is UUA and UUC, or the
UCC.
Unitarian Universalist Association and the United Church of Christ created the curriculum together. However, other organizations and groups teach the curriculum, but in order for it to be called OWL, it has to be taught in its entirety and follow the curriculum practically to a T. There is a religious component of it that teaches like what our religion stands for, but that's optional. And so we've kind of been in the talk of maybe just leave that out so that it may feel more accessible to people who aren't a member of our church. Just take out the religion part, just say it's being held at a church. I know that might draw in a couple more people, families. So, yes. Yeah.
Tom. You're on mute, Tom.
A couple of the community radio stations, just as you said, if you're not mentioning a religious thing, but you're talking about this kind of a program held at a church, I think that you would find that as a possible way to not only advertise the program once it's up and rolling, but advertise the kids that might be interested or parents who might be interested. So
Yeah.
you think you should keep that in your mind. The other thing was just to emphasize this, during our, when we had the Thanksgiving meal, I sat with a new lady with probably a 14-year-old girl, 13 or 14-year-old girl. And I mentioned to her about this OWL program, and she'd never been to a UU church before, but she knew about it. So
Ooh, that makes me so happy.
yeah. So I don't know how she learned about it. And the other thing, as I may have mentioned to you, Dan McClay has volunteered his services, through TikTok and other things to put together a program that might attract youth who would be interested to help you build up the clientele you need to run the program. So, and he's a member of our congregation. So.
Yes, no, I fully agree. Social media like TikTok, Instagram. I know that my students tell me Facebook's for old people now. Who knew?
Yeah.
But apparently that's the case. So having somebody who knows what kids like, I should know because I'm a teacher, but I don't.
Well, and learn and the parents.
Yeah.
In our case with our kids, it was Mary and me who said to the kids, "You're going there."
Yeah.
Because we knew about it, and that was important for the parents to say, "My kid needs this information, whether he likes it or not."
Right. I mean, it's important information. but to get kids excited about it would be, you'd have the best engagement from kids.
Yeah.
But so this flyer, like I said, I'm gonna email it to you. I have a draft of it, the email already made as a PDF attachment, but I'll email that to you guys. Like I said, it's just a draft, but then you guys can get your eyes on it to see what we're kind of thinking. I'm not entirely sure when we will have a table set up. It's going to be very informal. Maybe myself and Marianne can sit in the back of our church at the end of service and just kind of get the word out. It's a 1-page flyer. It's got pictures, basic information. I got all the information from the UUA website with their OWL description, because that's where the course comes from. And in that flyer, we talk about, we don't have a date set. We really need to get some interest from families. We need some additional facilitators. So if you want to be interested, that's all in the flyer. But whenever we as OWL people meet again, we will probably talk more about, like I said, I just talked to the woman from that was sitting at the fig tree booth at this fair trade festival. And my hope is that maybe we can get an ad in there, because that's some like-minded families would subscribe to that newspaper. And kind of our fear about just putting open advertisements is possibly negative backlash from people in the community. And we don't want to bring on negative backlash to the church for this class. So we're a little bit weary about just posting advertisements around town without being mindful of who the audience is to wherever we're advertising, if that makes sense. But we talked about that in our meeting.
Well, good exploratory work, Lilia. Let's just keep us posted as things go
Sure.
on. Thank you for doing that. I'm noticing it is after 8 o'clock. We have not gotten to our priorities yet. And I'm thinking we pretty much need to end and bump that to the next session. It's just not enough time for us to get into this and discuss it. Do I have agreement on that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Tom, you're muted.
This is just something regarding the last conversation. The bylaws, that's kind of my job, is to keep you up on that. The bylaws do say that the operations team has to kind of be in charge of or be notified or approve of any use of the advertising of something that might involve something that appears to be a church policy or something like that. So work with Rebecca when you kind of finalize your plans or in the process of finalizing it.
Perfect. I'm writing that down. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt again.
Well, I move that we we adjourn this meeting, and our next meeting will be on the 28th of December, and then also the 14th. I'm hoping that there'll be some other people willing to be there with Todd and I for the FAQ session.
Great.
So vote to adjourn? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Adjourn for tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike in North
Thanks,
Carolina.
Catherine. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Thanks
Mike.
for letting me join you or observe.
Catherine, you and I need to have a
Great meeting.
conversation about this next board meeting in December.
Okay. What, do you have my phone number?
No, give it to me real quick.
206-802-8141.
206-812-802.
No, 802-8141.
8141. Thank you.
Just call me right after we hang up here.
I will.
Oh, Lilia, you're mute.
I have a very quick question. I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but I don't know. I have a name tag at the church. I know everybody has those fancy ribbons that says board member, and with our talk about people approaching us with questions, nobody knows I'm a board member because I'm just new and I'm young. I don't know if those are still.
You need a ribbon.
I need a ribbon. I want a ribbon.
Membership team put those on, and I noticed that some other board members didn't have it either, and
I
that's who they
want one.
contacted was the membership team.
Okay. Do I contact somebody?
I think so, and I don't know who.
Okay,
Does anybody, does Lynn know?
I would just check with Rebecca.
Rebecca is
Yeah.
Rebecca ops team, correct?
She's the operations manager,
Okay,
and find out where in any of the, I mean, they definitely do, name tags, so I would imagine
Mhm.
she
I
gets
would
ribbon.
love to have a ribbon. It'd make me feel so
course.
special.
Yeah,
need
it
one.
made me feel very special when I had mine with the
Right?
ribbon too. So yeah, Rebecca knows everything and we would be sunk without her. And yeah, Rebecca's the one to get in touch with.
Okay, I'll send her an email then.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Have a good
Okay.
night, y'all.
Good night.
night.
Well, I'll leave and call me